There are so many amazing little Easter eggs and secrets hidden throughout Jedi Survivor, and I've actually been noting down everything I can find since I've had my hands on the game, and today we're going to be going through 50 Easter eggs that I've found in Jedi Survivor. Now, I'm definitely a bit of a rambler, and that is a lot of different Easter eggs to get through, so I'm going to pretty much speed run through these as fast as I possibly can. Strap in, probably find a helmet or some safety gear, because we are going to be absolutely sending it, but without wasting any time, let's jump right in. The Tronto shell you guys can see at the very beginning of Koboh, you can actually tame this in the same way that you can tame the Nekos, and from there is actually a hidden little secret if you jump onto his like tentacle thing here, so be sure to go and check that out. When you enter Pyloon Saloon from the main entrance, you can actually see a clone helmet sitting up there on the little rafter. The detail in this place is absolutely amazing, and there are so many little Easter eggs hidden throughout the saloon. There are actually two more that I'm going to note in this video. In the booth closest to the DJ deck, there are actually some battle droid heads sitting behind Cage there as well, and then back where you actually see that first clone helmet, there is actually a little replica of Jabba's sail barge from Return of the Jedi, which is definitely an awesome little touch as well. Now, I've got a full video coming on this specifically in the coming days, but just to quickly mention it, there is actually a hidden cave system within Jedi Survivor. It is right there on Koboh. This thing has heaps of mini bosses. It's got a freaking Rancor down there, and there's actually a bunch of cool lightsaber parts and even a map upgrade as well. So keep your eyes peeled on the channel for the full breakdown of that cave system. Now, someone that we meet very early on in the game is Bode Akuna. He is obviously Cal's great friend throughout the game, but you guys actually probably know this guy from somewhere else. Now, not Bode himself, but the voice actor Noshir Dalal is actually in 3 other pieces of Star Wars media, most notably voicing Admiral Rampart in The Bad Batch. If you've played Red Dead Redemption 2 as well, he actually voices Charles in that game too, so he definitely has a familiar voice, and I'm sure most of you guys have probably played plenty of games that he's actually in. He's done heaps and heaps of work, and he always nails the roles that he plays. Now, I mentioned earlier about Cage, who is the bounty hunter that you can find in Pyloon Saloon. If you guys actually head back to Coruscant, you can see this little like poster, I guess, or billboard that actually has a wanted picture with Cal on it, but right next to that is actually a wanted poster with Cage on it as well. Now, while we're on Coruscant, something I found is actually to do with Attack of the Clones, and you can actually see the speeder that Anakin and Obi-Wan were chasing Zam Wesell in. Now, whether it's the exact speeder or not, I'm not really sure, but it's definitely the same model, and that is definitely a cool little hidden Easter egg that is pretty much right there. It is on the main path, so it's actually pretty hard to miss this unless you're like me and you're too busy getting murked by stormtroopers. Now, another movie reference is actually to do with the Rancor, and this is the first Rancor that you find in the game right near Rambler's Reach. Obviously, in Return of the Jedi, Luke puts the bone in the Rancor's mouth, and that is pretty much how he manages to survive. Well, you guys will notice some bones scattered throughout the actual boss area where you find this Rancor, and if you use the Force on those bones, you can actually throw them at the Rancor, and they will get stuck in his mouth, similar to how they do in Return of the Jedi. Now, not only Jedi Survivor, but also Fallen Order have had a lot of references to Metroid. It's a really old school game that has a lot of backtracking similar to this game, but there is actually a genuine reference in here that relates exactly to the Metroid games. In that game, there are 3 little creatures that show you how to do the sort of wall jump thing that we actually get to do in Survivor. And as you can see here, the Boglings do the exact same thing. They show you how to do that wall jump, which is a direct callback to Metroid. If you head into this shack on Koboh, you can actually find this random weird looking character. I'm not sure what species he is, but if you talk to him, he will actually open up the floor in his own little like shack there. Once you head down the stairs, you can actually see one of the same species in a chair, and he is dead. And then when you turn around, the guy who let you down there actually attacks you. This is some really weird story about him killing his brother or something weird. It is definitely a very unique part of the game, but definitely go and check it out if you haven't already. When you're customizing your lightsaber, you can actually change the angle of which the crossguard vents are facing, which adds even more customization to the lightsaber. We all know the pink poncho meme from Jedi Fallen Order, and it has made its way back into Jedi Survivor. You can actually unlock the pink poncho and a bunch of other colors for it too, but you will have to beat this spawn of Ogdo, and it is definitely a very tough boss fight. Now, speaking of Ogdo, if you head into Doma Dendra's shop and touch this Force Echo on this weird little frog creature, it will actually open up a Force Tear, and when you enter that Force Tear, you can find the spawn of Ogdo that you may have just killed for that poncho, and Ogdo Bogdo himself, the actual one from Fallen Order. Now, I've touched on Cage a few times already in this video, and if you guys have done the Bounty Hunter storyline in this game, you will know the ending to that. At the very end of that, you can actually see Cal pick up Cage's blaster, and then when you go into your own blaster customization, you can actually equip her own blaster as yours, so that is definitely a cool little touch there as well. There is a hidden Force Tear right near the waterfall on Koboh, not too far from Rambler's Reach, and it has a fun little parkour course for you guys to do for a little bit of training. Now, I touched on the Rancor earlier, but there is actually somewhere you can find 2 of these bad boys in the same place. There is a Force Tear on Coruscant, and when you enter that Force Tear, you will come across 2 Rancors, and this is not an easy battle at all. Speaking of battles that are not easy, to unlock one of the latest stims in the game, you do need to get to this area up on the top of Koboh. It's actually really close to where the Mantis crashes at the start of the game, and guarding that will be a legendary Goroko. This thing is even tougher than the other ones that are placed around the planet. Heading back to the saloon, if you actually head in through the bathroom, not only can you wash your hands in there, but if you actually use the force on this toilet, you will find a priorite shard. I'm not sure I'd be picking that up if I was Cal, but I guess that's Doma's problem at the end of the day. This is easily the weirdest Easter egg in this entire video, and no doubt in the entire game. If you head to a certain part of the map and you have to go through like 2.5 minutes of climbing through this little dark cave area, we'll come across these battle droids who are painting a Mogu, who is doing the whole paint me like one of your French girls pose. It is easily the weirdest thing I've ever seen in this game, and one of the weirdest things I've seen in Star Wars in general, to be honest. Early on in the game, you can come across a pit droid, and if you actually help him out later on in the game, you can actually recruit him back to the Mantis, and when you go to the Mantis, he will be there checking up on the ship each time you visit. If you come across these 2 characters in Jedi Survivor, you can actually recruit them as well back to Pyloon Saloon, and from there you can actually play a tabletop game called Holo Tactics, which I believe is actually in reference to the Holo Tactics table on the Millennium Falcon that we see Chewie consistently playing throughout the Star Wars saga. If you guys have played Battlefront 2, you will know of Del Meeko. He is one of the Inferno Squad members, and he is Iden Versio's partner. Now, the voice actor TJ Romini, he is actually the voice actor behind the Imperial Senator that we see at the very beginning of the game, so there are some overlapping characters here from Battlefront 2, and I've got another one for you guys later on in the video as well. There is actually a hut over in the swamp area of Koboh right near the Lucrehulk, and this hut is actually made out of Volta droids, and you can even find some more spare parts laying around this area too. Back on Coruscant, you can actually come across a legendary DT sentry droid. This thing looks absolutely awesome, and it is a very fun little boss fight as well. Now, in the Fonky cave that I mentioned earlier, that little hidden cave system, you can actually unlock all the parts for the duelist lightsaber, and as far as I'm aware, this is in reference to Count Dooku's saber. Obviously his is curved, so it's a little bit different, but this does have the little hook on the emitter that is very reminiscent of Count Dooku's lightsaber. Back over in that swamp area that I just talked about, you can actually come across a hidden little bogling that is pretty much charred, and it's all blacked out. It looks absolutely awesome, and if you check this out, be sure to give the poor little thing a pet. When you're searching for one of the stims on the 3rd planet, I'm not going to name it just yet, but there is a hidden cave off the beaten path, and you can actually come across a legendary alpha. If you guys remember from Fallen Order, there were the Nidak alphas that were on Dathomir, and this is a reference to one of those, but it is also another legendary creature. Now, I talked about the Cage storyline, or the Bounty Hunter storyline, just earlier. This one is very slight spoilers for that if you wanted to do that yourself, but if you finish that, you will actually come across Boba freaking Fett. Yes, he is in the game. He is voiced by Tamara Morrison. This isn't part of the main story, so don't worry too much about spoilers. A lot of people are going to miss this, and that's why I thought I would chuck it in the video. Heading back to that 3rd planet, one of the mounts that we have, or the only mount on this planet, is called a Spammel. Now, these things are actually seen in Rogue One, and funnily enough, they're actually seen in one of the more recent episodes of The Mandalorian, the infamous Jack Black and Lizzo episode. You can actually see one of these in the background of their little palace area. Now, I mentioned TJ Romini from Battlefront 2 just earlier, but another character who is from Battlefront 2, or the voice actor, is Matt Mercer, who actually voiced Luke Skywalker in that game. Now, he is in this game as well. This character that you can see here, he is voiced by Matt Mercer, which is pretty cool to have both of them in the game, especially considering they actually interacted in Battlefront 2 as well. If you guys finish the game and do the New Journey Plus, you can actually unlock the red lightsaber. Yes, this is in the game, so if you're looking to play as more of a dark side Cal, definitely start the New Journey Plus. Now, speaking of lightsabers, there are actually 2 lightsabers you can find on this 3rd planet as well, who are from very prominent characters from the Jedi franchise. Now, the first one is Sia Junda. Her lightsaber is actually just right in the hangar. It's very, very easy to find. And then if you're willing to do a bunch of actual like little puzzles, you can actually unlock Eno Cordova's lightsaber as well, and he's just very reminiscent of Luke's saber too, so this one definitely looks awesome. Just like the throwback to the Nidak Alpha from Fallen Order, there is actually another throwback to the Jotaz, who were mostly found on Zepho in Fallen Order. There is actually a legendary Jotaz that can be found on Coruscant, and you can actually find this pretty early on in the game. If you head to Doma Dendra's shop, you can actually buy some Clone Wars pants. These have the actual armor that the Clone Troopers wear. It's not exactly the same, obviously, but it even says in the description this is from scavenged clone parts. Very late on in the game, and I'm not going to mention any spoilers here, but there is a Force Echo that actually mentions something from the High Republic era, which is the Nihil. If you guys have read the High Republic books or the comics, you will know exactly who the Nihil are, and yes, they are mentioned in Jedi Survivor. One of the more random legendary creatures in the game is actually the B2 droid. This thing randomly appears at the Southern Reach, and I'm not going to lie, it's a pretty easy boss fight, but it is pretty cool to see nonetheless. Something that a lot of people might freak out over is you can actually unlock Beskar steel as one of the materials for your lightsaber customization. Keep your eyes peeled on the channel for a lightsaber video because I will be showing you exactly where to find it. If you guys can remember Sork Tormo from Jedi Fallen Order, he's the one who pretty much traps you in that little prison and you have to fight your way out. He is actually mentioned in Jedi Survivor as a part of the Bounty Hunter storyline. At one point throughout the story, Merrin actually says don't let him swim, which is in reference to the ending of Fallen Order where she pretty much has to come and save Cal from drowning. To be fair, he did just fight freaking Darth Vader, but yes, in this scene she is making fun of him for pretty much nearly drowning at the end of Fallen Order. Now this one isn't that useful, but it is cool nonetheless. The actual lights on the back of BD1's head, they will indicate your health level. Obviously the UI down the bottom left, it does a good enough job of showing this anyway, but as you can see, when you're full health, the light on the back of his head is green, but if you're actually low on health, that light will actually go red. We see throughout Jedi Survivor that Greez actually has a robotic hand. He did not have that in Jedi Fallen Order. The reason for that is that in the Battle Scars novel, he actually loses that hand in that novel, so definitely give that a read if you haven't already. Now, speaking of Greez, at one point in the game, he actually mentions having too much salt, pretty much saying that it will ruin the food, which is a little bit odd because in the first game, he literally has this scene right here where he's pouring about 40 kilos worth of salt onto his food. Now, right next to where he's actually doing that, you can actually see the old terrarium, the old spot in the Mantis where you could actually put the plants or the seeds, I guess, in Fallen Order. Because there is now the garden, that is no longer there, but you can actually see a bunch of little objects from the first game, and they each have their own little backstory. Later on in the game, you will get to the observation deck on Kobo, and there is yet another legendary boss fight here. This character called Orgost. He's definitely pretty tough, and he also looks very cool as well. Now, the rest of these are slightly getting into spoiler territory. They're not really spoilers at all. They just mention a few things from later on in the game. So if you're not interested in spoilers, be sure to click off the video right now, and if you are heading out, be sure to smack that like button on the way out. But if you're not too worried about these being spoiled, then you guys can keep on watching. Ravis actually makes the bold one joke at one point throughout the game, which is obviously a reference to General Grievous in this iconic line from Revenge of the Sith. If you guys have gotten up to the third planet, and I guess if you're watching this point, you'll know the planet's name by now. It is obviously Jedha. You will see what Sia and Eno Cordova are up to. Now, this is something that is very easy to miss, but what they are actually creating here, the Hidden Path, this was actually mentioned in the Kenobi TV series, which is definitely a very awesome crossover, and something I actually did not pick up on straight away. Later on in the story, when Cal is disguised as an ISB agent, you can actually go up and talk to this Purge Trooper who has some very honest thoughts to give to Cal. Now, number 50 is that the Jedi text that we actually see throughout the game, I could be wrong here, but I believe these are actually the ones that do eventually get passed on to Luke Skywalker when he is on Ahch-To. Now, obviously it's not all of them, but there are some of these in the background that definitely look very similar. Whether they're the same or not, I'm not too sure, but it is very cool to see nonetheless. So those are 50 Easter eggs and secrets within Jedi Survivor. Let me know if you guys know of any more, because I can always do a follow-up to this video as well. So be sure to leave those little Easter eggs down in the comment section. Now, if you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe for more. There is plenty of videos on the way like this one, and as well as this type of content, I will be making some mod content on the channel as well as soon as there are some really cool mods coming out for Jedi Survivor, so be sure to keep an eye on the channel for those. With that being said though, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and may the Force be with you always.